Good evening, everyone. Josh's severe weather. Hurricane Milton getting very close to the coast of Florida with landfall expected late this evening and damaging winds, tornadoes, flooding rain, powerful storm surge, and a lot more coming from this storm as it continues to grow and is ready to make its final approach to the western coast of Florida here, near and just to the south of Tampa Bay tonight. We're going to break down what's going on now, every wobble in the track, every adjustment in the forecast, and more in this video. So I appreciate you joining me here this evening as one of our biggest storms to hit Florida in a decade is making its approach right now. Here is a look at what we're talking about here. Category 3 storm, at least as of my estimate here by 5 o'clock tonight, getting close to landfall here in the next 6 to 10 hours. That'll be coming onshore near and just to the south of Tampa Bay, Bradenton, maybe the north side of Sarasota County, and then heading inland across central Florida. We have tornadoes ongoing on the east coast of Florida, especially just inland from Interstate 95, the turnpike there. And we've seen some damage across parts of the interior of the peninsula. Here is our satellite image, and you'll see that the cloud canopy continues to grow as Milton is getting bigger and bigger, even though the storm is starting to weaken, coming down from a Category 4 earlier today and a 5 last night, but still a very powerful storm. And the bigger it gets, the more we see a broader area that gets affected by wind, a broader area that gets affected by heavy rain, and a broader area that gets affected by storm surge. You can see here on our minute-by-minute satellite image where the storm is centered right now underneath these cloud tops. The eye has filled in. This is Tampa right here. This is Bradenton right here. And the storm is beginning to bend more to the right. Now, the big question mark is, does that bend happen and take the system right up the bay? Does it happen before the bay and hit St. Petersburg and Clearwater, or does it make enough of a bend to narrowly miss Tampa Bay with the actual center and send the worst of the wind and rain into Bradenton or northern Sarasota? And we're still going to be watching every little wobble and track, because right now it's wobbling a little bit back to the left of the forecast track from earlier, and it may wobble right back. Here's a look at the radar image from the National Weather Service. You will notice that the southern eye wall is open. Dry air has gotten into the center from the southwest due to that wind shear that we've been talking about, but this eye wall in here means business. It is going to slam into the coast here this evening. Conditions going downhill as we talk now. Tropical storm force winds spreading inland. We do have flood warnings here across much of west central Florida and numerous tornado warnings as well in places like Port St. Lucie and now towards the Melbourne area as we see quite a bit of wind shear here out ahead of this. Some supercell type storms. This is radar scope. You can see we've got potentially some tornadoes that are quickly forming and moving off to the north here. One on the east side of Orlando, another tornado warning here just east of St. Cloud. And then we've seen particularly nasty areas of rotation here just on the eastern side of Lake Okeechobee. And this line continues down into the western part of Broward County and west of West Palm Beach. Some of these areas are seeing quick rotating storms that are moving northward here. Places like Wellington, Florida, and continuing on northward here, just to the west of Palm Beach Gardens and Port St. Lucie, we have multiple tornado warnings in effect. And we are going to continue to see these bands here producing lots of lightning with them, kind of supercell type storms, not the kind you would typically see in a landfalling hurricane, but we've got more going on than just the hurricane. We've got an approaching front and jet streak. And so we are going to continue to have to watch these cells as they move up the I-95 corridor this afternoon and early evening. Farther north, just a total washout. Winds are starting to pick up in west central Florida. We are going to start to see hurricane force winds over the next few hours along the coastline near and to the south of Tampa, and storm surge will start to climb significantly this evening. It's not super high yet, at least not as of this taping here at 4 o'clock. Taping, I don't know if taping is really a term anymore. This stream that I'm creating for you, this recording, but you will see here as the storm gets closer and closer, the strongest winds are going to move in, and the system will be slowing down as well. So numerous tornado warnings here as of 4:24 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll talk about more there in a little bit. This is the recon flight lately, and you can see, actually, if I take this back to this morning's flight, the storm did accelerate, moving to the north-northeast earlier, but the pressure came up by 15 millibars in the flight before lunchtime. At that point, we had a Category 5 dropping back to a Category 4, but a storm that bent to the left. Now, on our latest recon from this afternoon's flight, you see the bend starting to go back to the right a little bit, and the pressure continues to rise here at about 3 or 4 millibars per hour. The latest pressure fix, 949 millibars, which I personally think is now dropping us down to Category 3 from 4. And until that drop started earlier this morning, I didn't think we were necessarily out of the woods for seeing a 4, but I think at this point we probably are. And here's where the latest center is located. So the storm still has not made the bend to the right. It's wobbling a little bit left and right of the track. This is the opening of Tampa Bay, so it's going to have to make a bend pretty soon here if we want to see it avoid moving up the bay. And that is still possible. We could see it bend back in this direction here during the evening hours here between 5 and 10 o'clock. But after I make this video and you all watch it, we could certainly see a wobble in either direction. And the models don't do a great job in picking up every little specific wobble. So it's one of those things we just have to continue to nowcast. But one thing is for certain, the winds are coming down here. You can see flight level winds earlier were stronger than they are now. And in fact, we're not really seeing winds at flight level above 110 miles per hour. So we may eke out of this with just barely a Category 3. Don't ignore the threat, though, of the tornadoes, the flooding, the wind, the storm surge. This just means that maybe a few more rows of houses a few miles inland can avoid the storm surge that they normally would have gotten in a stronger storm. And that is fortunate if you think about it that way, but still a very damaging system here. Here is where our track at 4 o'clock is. And you can see the storm is veering to the left of the track. The forecast track was more like this. It's up in here. That may be temporary, but I don't think this is going to hit south of Sarasota. I think more than likely we're looking at this area in here being our final landfall point. And the timeline on that's probably going to be between 10 and midnight tonight, give or take. So Longboat Key, Bradenton Beach, and the mouth of Tampa Bay is the area that I think is likely going to get the strongest wind as the system moves inland. Beyond that, we will see the system coming by to the south of Interstate 4, weakening down to Category 2 later tonight, and probably a Category 1 by morning as it passes near Lake Wales and near Kissimmee, and then eventually heads towards the Space Coast and the Treasure Coast during the early morning hours of the day on Thursday. At that point, winds will be down probably below 100 miles per hour, more than likely between 80 and 90 miles per hour. And then the storm will continue to track more on a right bend here and eventually head due east as a weakening system here by the time we get to tomorrow afternoon, and a post-tropical system by Friday morning. So we continue the hurricane warnings across this area, hurricane watches farther south, and tropical storm warnings across the rest of South Florida. We do have a hurricane warning as well, very close to Jacksonville and Gainesville, as this storm is going to continue to grow in size. Here you can see that on the map. Much of this Florida Peninsula area is under hurricane warning, and this includes everybody inland, not just at the coast. We continue to have tropical storm warnings for the coastal empire of Georgia, for northern Florida, and for South Florida, and a tropical storm watch here for portions of the low country of South Carolina, but the storm surge watch has been canceled for that area. There have been adjustments here in the storm surge forecast as our storm has weakened a little bit. We have seen the peak forecast come down from 10 to 15 to 9 to 13 feet between Anna Maria Island and Boca Grande. That is still very high, but it is a little bit lower than initially predicted. 8 to 12 feet is still the going forecast for Tampa Bay. That is going to be destructive. The areas that got the worst surge in Hurricane Ian have an 8 to 12 foot forecast, including Charlotte Harbor and Fort Myers and the rivers surrounding those areas, and the barrier islands like Sanibel. And we have 5 to 8 feet for the rest of Collier County's coast down towards Monroe County. On the East Coast, we're also going to get hit pretty hard with storm surge north of Sebastian Inlet, right through the Space Coast, all the way up the coast to Altamaha Sound here in Georgia, near Brunswick and near St. Simon's Island. And on the west coast of Florida, north of the bay, we will still have storm surge here over the next few hours into the overnight hours up to Yankeetown, and small amounts of storm surge across the Big Bend. And that has not changed for those areas. We are seeing the tropical storm force winds already moving on shore here. They'll continue to do so as the night wears on, and then move to the east coast here overnight tonight, especially in this area in purple here near to the south of Interstate 4. A high flood risk continues during the night tonight and into the early part of tomorrow across all of Central Florida. And rainfall totals here could exceed 15 inches in a few locations. Taking a look here at our tropical model, I want to show you how the wind field is predicted to expand. This was the run from earlier, and you can see that the storm has begun to grow and grow and grow some more, and will be a much bigger wind field by the time it comes inland here tonight. Landfall on this model is being shown at around 11 o'clock near Bradenton Beach. The pressure here is probably a little bit on the low side. It may be closer to 950, but we'll have to see. And then you can see as the storm spreads inland, it does weaken, but the wind field significantly grows, especially north and west of our system. Here's a look at what the wind gusts may look like from this particular set of models here. We will begin to see hurricane force wind gusts after 5 o'clock around the Tampa Bay area, and then between 5 and 8 o'clock, we will see hurricane force winds moving onshore here in parts of Sarasota County and Charlotte County as well, and for the mouth of the Tampa Bay. As we head into the late evening hours, there's a potential for wind gusts to exceed 100 miles per hour and perhaps get as high as 125 miles per hour in portions of Manatee and Sarasota counties right on the coast, and possibly as well getting past 100 miles per hour right around the Bay Area, including St. Petersburg and Tampa proper and some of the suburbs there as well. And this wind is going to spread inland into places like Brooksville and Lakeland and Sumter County and some of these other areas here along the Interstate 4 corridor. Notice how the center of the storm is expected to be down here, but the strongest winds are going to eventually line up on the northwestern side of our storm here after landfall tonight. That is due to the interaction with the jet stream and what's called a baroclinic process, which means we lose a lot of the tropical processes that strengthen a storm, and we gain some of the non-tropical processes that come with, say, a developing low and a cold front. As we get into the overnight hours, this is 2 in the morning. We are still getting battered very hard here with hurricane force winds, and they are going to be moving towards the Orlando metropolitan area after 2 a.m. Everybody here in the red is likely to see power outages due to the strong wind. As we get to 5 in the morning, that is when the winds should be at their worst in Orlando and also in areas south and west of Orlando and up to Daytona. Basically, all of Interstate 4 is going to be dealing with wind gusts over 60 miles per hour to as much as 80 to 85 miles per hour during the first part of the day tomorrow morning. We also could see strong wind gusts here down on the Treasure Coast, places like Melbourne, Vero Beach, Sebastian, Wabasso, and maybe even down close to Port St. Lucie and Tequesta and those areas there. And spreading northward as well towards Ocala and the Villages, we have the potential for wind gusts approaching hurricane force, hence that hurricane warning. Tomorrow morning, things will be quickly improving on the west coast of Florida, but we will continue to have powerful winds as our storm is getting ready to move back out over the water near the Space Coast, near Port Canaveral here, Cape Canaveral, Titusville here around 8 or 9 in the morning. But notice this sting jet here from the northeast here. This is going to bring some storm surge and some incredibly strong winds into places like Volusia and Flagler counties, and still back into the Orlando area as well, especially the east side of Orlando. There's going to be a process that allows these winds to actually increase as our storm is moving back over the water. And we may see our strongest winds from this storm on the East Coast after the storm has made its way back out. And that is not good, because that means we're going to get hit here from waters coming back onshore rather than a storm coming in from the west. So it'll get worse after the storm passes, potentially. Jacksonville, you're very close. Right now we see wind gusts on our models remaining below 60 miles per hour, and I hope it stays that way. Farther to the south of you, St. Augustine, those areas could see wind gusts over 60 miles per hour. The Georgia coastline could see wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour, but inland areas, I don't think we'll see strong wind at this point. Even beyond our storm leaving the coast, the winds continue to crank back up, and we see on this particular model the potential for 100 mile per hour wind gusts battering the northern part here of Cape Canaveral, and some of the areas getting up closer to Daytona here. By the time we get to after lunchtime tomorrow, we may actually see some strong winds farther down the east coast here into places like Jupiter, Juno Beach, some of these locations here, maybe Jensen Beach. So keep that in mind here for the afternoon tomorrow. We're not just completely out of the woods just yet until we get to about 5 or 6 o'clock. So about this time tomorrow is when the winds are expected to begin to diminish. The HRRR model shows something similar. It's not a tropical model, but it goes hour by hour, and this is 10 o'clock. Our strongest winds are moving onshore. This is 11 o'clock tonight, and you see wind gusts to around 100 miles per hour in Brandon. This is midnight tonight, and we will see wind gusts that are over 80 miles per hour in places like Brooksville, Homosassa Springs. As we get past midnight, these strong winds begin to move farther inland and penetrate the Turnpike area here, the central portion of Florida. And as we get to tomorrow morning, we will actually see the worst winds in the Orlando area around or after 6 in the morning to about 7 and 8. And you can see here, this particular model has wind gusts in excess of 80 miles per hour to as much as maybe 95 miles per hour. So nobody's going to escape this along our track here. And in fact, the strongest winds will be on the north side of our storm after it makes landfall tonight. Tomorrow, we'll continue to see these strong winds out over the water and battering the Space Coast here through the middle of the day, and then gradually improving towards the afternoon and quieting down by the evening tomorrow night. A little bit farther north, I don't want to leave you out here in the surrounding states. I think we're in pretty good shape west of Jacksonville. It'll be a little bit breezy, but we're not going to see sustained winds. We will actually have a bigger threat from heavier rain. But you can see here up the Carolina coast, it does get windier as the day goes on here tomorrow. 40 to maybe 50 mile per hour wind gusts on the beaches. But as we go inland here, these wind gusts should stay below tropical storm force. The tornado risk continues to be enhanced here through the early evening hours. We're pretty much seeing that now, but this risk continues into tonight. We've had reports of tornadoes, at least 17 of those, in particular across Lee, Highlands, Martin, Okeechobee, and St. Lucie counties, but also recently across parts of Martin and Osceola counties, we have seen tornado warnings. And you can see on our experimental model radar here why that's going on here. We've got these cells in here that are looking like supercells, and then we may see a few more moving on to the southwest coast here tonight around 5, 6, 7 o'clock. So basically, by the time you're watching this, the threat for tornadoes is going to reach a peak. And then as we get later into the evening hours, that should start to wane a little bit here. You can see tornado parameters are pretty juicy and pretty high here at 5 o'clock on the east coast of Florida. And then the parameters are going to start winding down here after it gets dark out, after 7 or 8 o'clock. That doesn't mean we're totally out of the woods for tornadoes, but I think the stronger storm threat is basically right on through about 6 or 7 o'clock tonight, and then gradually coming down here later in the evening. It does not mean we can't still have a tornado during the night tonight, but it will become a little bit less likely at that point. And you can see here just some incredible amounts of what we call helicity that's turning here in the atmosphere. Strong updrafts. This is reminiscent of what could be a tornado break in the wintertime in Florida, not necessarily a fall hurricane. So that's really it on Milton. We will have a new advisory here around 5 o'clock. I'm not going to be able to continue this video that late. I want to get this online, but it will probably be a Category 3 and weakening. Elsewhere, we do have Hurricane Leslie, which is strengthening again. And we do have this disturbance, AL93, which does not look likely to develop as it approaches Bermuda tonight. Another wave we're going to watch, but no threat to land at this point. And you can see on the map here, Leslie is really the only other issue at this point, and it's going to stay over the central Atlantic. Expected to reach 100 mile per hour, and I would not be shocked if it tried to get a little bit higher than that. There's a small chance it even becomes a major hurricane, but it's going to have to do it quickly here. Aside from that, pretty quiet across the Caribbean and across the main development region. Our next wave leaves the coast here in the next day and has a chance of maybe affecting the Cabo Verde Islands. Elsewhere in the world, the remains of Kirk have moved inland near Paris now, and very light winds at this point, not a big deal. We do have a disturbance which is looking like it's not going to develop as it approaches Cabo San Lucas here over the next day. And we do have a smaller tropical system here, maybe a depression at the worst, that's going to pass by well to the east of Japan. But that is it. All of the action here is across the Gulf of Mexico and across the central Atlantic Ocean. Here's a look at that invest real quick for you all to see here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but you can see not enough organized convection to classify this as a tropical storm, although there are some intense thunderstorms in here that are producing tropical storm force wind. This is Bermuda, and you're getting that rain here today, Bermuda, and you're going to get more here as the remains of Milton head your way at the end of the week. And then little Leslie is doing pretty nice here. Nice swirl. This thing looked like it was going to bite the dust and then made a comeback here yesterday afternoon and growing in size here. But you can see out ahead of it, we do have this wind shear coming out from our front and from a combination of AL93 and from Hurricane Milton. So eventually Leslie will reach her demise as she gets up into this area in here. But she's been very resilient and is racking up some what we call ace points out here. Here's the official forecast track. Not a big concern for anybody except maybe the Azores by early next week. And then finally, I do want to address what could be our next area to watch for development. We're not seeing a consistent signal yet at this point, but we do need to watch the Western Caribbean next week. Right now, it's very early in this stage to see if anything forms, but you can see here by the middle of next week, there are some of our solutions with the GFS ensemble that try to develop something here, and it may not just be a weak little system either. Again, we've got a lot of uncertainty here. We've got models that are interacting with Central America by the end of next week, and we have some solutions that come up towards the Bahamas and Florida. So right now, we're still going to just have to keep an eye on it. We're not ready to make a forecast yet, but there are solutions that do pull something up into the Gulf of Mexico the following week. And unfortunately, that does, it is something we don't like to see here in Florida, but I don't want to scare folks at this point. Just want you all to know that there may still be something else out there. It's too soon to make any calls on it. Here you can see the GFS operational from earlier, showing that low pressure forming in about a week east of Honduras and Nicaragua. And the latest run takes it towards Belize and the Yucatan and does not survive the Southern Gulf. I say it doesn't survive the Southern Gulf, but it's still hanging out down there. So anything goes this time of the year. The run before it, by the way, that I showed you earlier today, yanked this system farther along towards the Cayman Islands and then drew it in the direction of Florida. So we're going to see different runs showing different things at this point, but until it forms in about a week or so, we've got plenty of time before trying to make a forecast. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I hope everybody stays safe out there. Just know that I am praying for everybody in the path of Milton. I continue to pray for those who have been impacted by Helene, some of you by both, unfortunately, but I do want to remind you that despite all of this craziness, that we still serve a wonderful God, whether or not you choose to believe that. But as a Christian, I give God all the honor and glory. Psalm 19 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world." We serve a wonderful God, and it's a broken world out there, and we can't stop things. But what we can do is turn to God in these times of trouble. He is our refuge and our strength. And if you are not a believer, I'm not going to judge you on that, because I wasn't for the first 30 years of my life. But what I do know now, since I have become a Christian and a believer, that everything matters more. And there's more coming for me in my eternal life, because there wasn't that opportunity before I became a Christian. The opportunity for me to serve others, this is my assignment from God as a meteorologist, to help you all out with these weather storms, with these hurricanes, with tornadoes, and the opportunity as well to share the good news, because I'm not ashamed of it, and neither should you be. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will have a video up tomorrow at some point later in the morning. Any updates that are very important, I'll do my best to stay up to update you on those, but I'm probably gonna have to get some rest as well later tonight. I hope you all have a blessed night. See you soon.